Hey everybody, and welcome back to another season of the Preacher and the Prodigy podcast. It is 2021 and everything's starting over.
Yep. After a bad COVID year, Pac-12 hardly playing at all. It was an abbreviated year. This year will probably really show what teams are going to be like.
It's hard to know what to make of last season in terms of schools' national and long-term prestige. Some schools just didn't even hardly show up. They were down a whole bunch of players week to week. Scores were all over the map. But in the end, as always, one team stood above the rest.
That was Bama. They went 13-0. Mac Jones and Devontae Smith had one of the best QB wide receiver combinations in a long time. Except for maybe Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. But their offense was so potent, they couldn't be stopped. Their defense was solid also. They rocked both of the teams they played in the college football playoff. They just could not be stopped.
The more things change, the more they stay the same. Nick Saban now with 6 or 7 national championships.
I think it's 7.
And just doesn't show any signs of slowing down. So we're excited for another year. We're going to pick games week to week, but this is our kind of national overview preview show, and we're going to come back in a couple of days with a specific show for those who, like us, are fans of the Michigan Wolverines. And boy, that ought to be fun. But let's begin with our top 10s, and we're going to ask some maybe slightly different questions than are being asked in other college preview podcasts, and just kind of overview what's happening on the national landscape this year. So, are we going to go one at a time through this, or you want to give? How about you give me 10 through 6, and then I'll give you 10 through 6, and then we'll go 5 through 1,
Right.
and I'll go through 5 through 1.
Right.
One thing that we did say is we're going to make this interesting, and that there needs to be at least one team in our top 10s that is not in the AP top 25. Because every year there's a team that starts out in the top 10 and doesn't make it into the top 25, and vice versa. There's a team that isn't in the first 25 rankings, but then finishes in the top 10. So we're going to give you both of ours. In a minute, we'll come to the ones we're leaving out and why. But let's start with 10 through 6, and maybe we'll hear what your teams are or team that isn't ranked currently in the top 25, but you think is going to finish in the top 10. So we'll start with number 10.
Team, I think, this is going to be my number 10 team. Team, I think, that start out of the top 25. Going to be in the top 10. It's probably going to be Auburn. New coach Brian Harsin. Bo Nix still has to show that he's what the fans wanted. They've got Tank Bigsby, who's one of the best running backs in the nation. They've got very strong wide receivers, very good defensive line. Their linebackers could use some help, and their cornerbacks are all right, but I think they could contend in the SEC West, and every year they play Alabama. They always have a chance to beat them, so I think they're going to maybe try to get a very good year, try to beat teams from the East, SEC East, got to win all of their non-conference games if they want to be in the top 10. And I just think that I like what the new coach is doing, and I think this is going to be their year.
All right, your number 9.
My number 9 team, I'm going to go with Cincinnati. They have a very good offense. Their quarterback, Desmond Ridder, is one of the best in the group of 5. Their running game, their passing game, all over their offense. They can't be stopped, and their defense might be one of the best in the nation. They've got Ahmad Gardner, who is an All-American player, first-team All-American. They've got an incredible defensive line and front 7. And I just think that they're going to not really surprise some people, but this isn't going to be what people think, and they're going to explode and going to be a top 10 team.
All right, number 8.
My number 8 team is going to be Oregon. They have not had a very, how do I put this? They've been in a lot of New Year's Six Bowls, but they can't quite reach the CFP 4. They've been winning Pac-12 titles left and right. They're recruiting like nobody's business. They've gone They've got a defensive end who is a Heisman Trophy finalist, possibly. And
Kayvon Thibodeau, we're talking about there.
And
he's a freak.
They've got, they lost their starting quarterback, Tyler Show. He went to Texas Tech. So they had to replace there. And running back C.J. Verdell kind of had an off year last year with the COVID pandemic. He's looking to bounce back. And then their wide receivers always are pretty good.
All right.
My number 7 team is going to be Texas A&M. They finished the year on an 8-game winning streak. Their only loss that year was to Alabama, of course, the national champion. Isaiah Spiller is a very, very good running back. They lost Kellen Mond, their quarterback, to the draft, but they're going to have some decent replacements up there. Not very many starts for the backups, but I think
Jimbo Fisher's been recruiting very well.
Yeah, Jimbo Fisher has been has had a top 10 recruiting class every season he's been there. The defense is pretty good. It's not like the top defense in the SEC or anything. They're overall just a really solid team, and I think they're going to do pretty good.
And then your number 6.
My number 6 team is going to be Georgia. JT Daniels coming back from USC. A lot of people think he's going to have a Heisman type year. Mm-hmm. And then Zamir White, their running back, is all SEC running back. They have, as always, one of the best defenses in the nation. Their offensive line is studded. Their wide receivers pretty sure they lost George Pickens. But they're still going to have some other guys that can catch the ball.
All right, so just count off again your 10 through 6 one more time quickly for people can remember.
Number 10 is Auburn. Number 9 is Cincinnati. Number 8, Oregon. Number 7, Texas A&M. And number 6, Georgia.
And your team that is not currently in the AP Top 25 would be the Auburn Tigers. And they check in right now at number 30. So I'm going to give you 10 through 6 for me, probably in a little less detail. But I actually went with 2 teams in my top 10 that are currently not ranked, and none of them happen to be Auburn. My number 10 team, I'm going to go out on a limb because I'm a really big believer in the head coach and the quarterback. I'm going with Boston College. I think that Boston College could surprise some teams this year. I really love Jeff Hafley. I think he's a great leader, great teacher, and I think Phil Yakovich is ready to have a good year behind center. My number 9 team, this is entirely predicated on assuming that they go undefeated. I'm going with the Liberty Flames. Malik Willis, excellent player, and if they're undefeated at the end of the season, maybe even if they have one tough loss, I think they're going to sneak into the top 10.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Yeah, not necessarily that they are one of the best 10 teams, but I think that they will finish the season ranked at number 9 or so.
Really good offense.
Yep. Number 8, a lot of people doubt I'm going to believe in Clay Helton this year. I'm taking the Trojans of USC, Keaton Slovis, Graham Harrell offense. I'm maybe not as high on Oregon as you, and I think USC is going to take the Pac-12 this year. My number 7 team is a team I am irrationally high on, but I really think this is going to be a great year for the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think that they win the Big Ten West. I think that they knock off Wisconsin. I'm not so high in Wisconsin. I think Iowa could be at the end of the year an 11-2 team and be ranked number 7. I don't have them winning the Big Ten, but I do think that they win the West, and that's going to be a tremendous battle with the in-state Cyclones from Ames. And then my number 6 team, for reasons why I'll say a little bit later, I'm not as high on Cincinnati. I am going to take Notre Dame. I think that the ACC as a whole is down a little bit this year. I am going to, spoiler alert, I'm going to take Clemson, but I'm just such a big Marcus Freeman fan, the defensive coordinator who left Cincy, went over to Notre Dame. I'm going to take the Irish again by virtue of I think an overall weakened ACC, and that they play a lot of ACC teams. So I'm going to take Notre Dame as my number 6 team. So again, 10 through 6, Boston College, Liberty, USC, Iowa, and then at 6, Notre Dame. And now let's go to our top 5.
All right, so are we just going to flip back and forth 5?
Sure.
Okay,
your number 5 team. We're going to have a lot of the same teams, I'm sure.
Yeah. My number 5 team is going to be Iowa State, the in-state team along with Iowa. A lot of people out there are going to hate me for this, but they have a very good team. Brock Purdy could fight with Spencer Rattler for one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. Mm-hmm. Breece Hall, probably the best running back in the nation. They have an incredible defense. Matt Campbell has done a good job there. Wide receivers are studded. Their offensive line is incredible. They have so many guys coming back. Tight ends, they have maybe the best tight end in the country.
Charlie Kohler,
and they're just amazing all around the board.
Yeah, that's fine, and I can't argue with any of the logic, but it just seems to me like sometimes, some years, some teams just have kind of magic about them, and I think that 2020 Iowa State just had some magic. They just were a very special team, a feel-good team, did a lot of things well. And sometimes, even though you carry over the same parts and the same staff in the subsequent year, they just, for some reason, you don't have the magic. And so I don't think Iowa State's going to be bad by any means, but I can't have them in my top 5. My number 5 ranked team, I'm going to go with the Clemson Tigers and DJU. I think Dabo's just recruited so well that even though they're going to be replacing a tremendous backfield, I think that Clemson has enough other parts. Brian Bresee is going to come to life big time on the defensive line. So I'm going to go with Clemson again to win the ACC. Maybe not by blowing everybody away like they have the last couple of years, and they may again, perhaps in 2022, but I'm taking Clemson as my number 5 team.
My number 4 team is going to be Ohio State. They have best receiver combo in the nation. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, both Heisman candidates. They got a new quarterback after Justin Fields went to the Bears. C.J. Stroud.
And the fact of the matter is that the Buckeyes have 4 quarterbacks that would start in a lot of places.
Yeah.
They're not all going to stay there, but hats off to them for finding a way to get them all on the roster.
Yeah, C.J. Stroud. It seems like he's won the job. I think he's going to be starting against Minnesota.
Ryan Day did announce that Stroud is the guy.
Master Teague has been a reliable running back after following the footsteps of J.K. Dobbins and other guys. And offensive line, Thayer Munford is going to be a powerhouse.
The offensive line is very, very deep.
And then the defensive line, they got Haskell Garrett, who they think is going to be the next great D lineman after Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, Chase Young, and now they think it's going to be Haskell Garrett. Their linebackers is probably their weakest link, even though they're still very good. And then the corners, even after losing Sean Wade, they keep on coming back, and it's not called the cornerback heat for no reason.
Yeah, Sevin Banks is the guy they're going to look to this year. I'll say a bit about Ohio State in a moment, too. My number 4 team is Georgia. I think that Georgia puts it together this year. Again, I'm a big believer in JT Daniels, and again, the strength of recruiting. I think I'm a little less high on Florida as some people, and I think Georgia will win the East, and so I'm going to take them as my number 4 team.
All right, my number 3 team, I think it's going to be Clemson. It seems like they're up there every year, and they are. This is what the AP poll thinks. Dabo Swinney is one of the greatest coaches of all time. He's done an incredible job recruiting, incredible job of developing players. They got a new quarterback, DJU.
Ungalele.
Yeah, or something like that. But he started, I think, 2 games when Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID. And we haven't seen much of him, but what we did see against Notre Dame is he was first quarterback ever to throw for 400 yards against Notre Dame. But they still lost, which I think they should have won. They've got the running backs kind of went down after losing Travis Etienne. Wide receivers, they get a big bounce back after Justin Ross got injured and was out for the year. He's going to be coming back as one of the best wide receivers. And then offensive line's pretty good. Brian Bresee, like you said, is like incredible. He's only a second or third year player, but he's amazing. Linebackers or quarterbacks, there's stuff to say about them, but I don't want to go that deep.
Yeah, my remaining 3 teams, I'm going to all suggest, I think, run the table. I think that they all are going to finish the regular season and their conference playoff games undefeated. So in the number 3 slot, I have the Sooners of Oklahoma, and Phil Steele has them ranked number 1. That's believing more in the defense than we have seen in recent years. But you think Oklahoma, you absolutely think about offense. And Spencer Rattler is going to have all kinds of fun back there this year, and I think the defense does enough to get them through that schedule unscathed. I'm going to take them. And Nick Bonito seems to be a kind of an anchor for the defense to build around, too. I'm taking Oklahoma number 3.
Yeah, I was taking Oklahoma number 2. Spencer Rattler, incredible quarterback, like all the recent Oklahoma quarterbacks. Wide receiver Marvin Mims, he's very good. Running backs, not as great as they were in other years. They're still all right, middle of the pack in the Big 12. But the defense is gotten a lot better since Alex Grinch came. The linebacker Nick Bonito was one of the best to do it in the Big 12 this year. Corners and D-line are pretty good. They've just developed. There's no really stand-up players, but they've just gotten better and better and better.
Yeah, and it may be that, in Iowa State seems to have Oklahoma's number recently. That could be a fantastic game. The other thing you just have to look at is, and again, I'm picking them to go to undefeated, but I think that the motivation for some of these other Big 12 teams to beat Oklahoma and Texas, they're angry with these schools for their dalliance and now the eventual divorce into the SEC. So there's going to be some extra fire in their belly to take down both the Horns and the Sooners. My number 2 team, I'm going with the Buckeyes. Again, I think it's kind of like 2A and 2B for me between Oklahoma and Ohio State. You mentioned a lot of the things about Ohio State that just cause fear and trembling in we Michigan fans. You have 4 quarterbacks that can all play. You haven't mentioned Trevian Henderson, who I think is a really good pick, potentially as National Freshman of the Year. I think he has that offensive line to just blow huge holes for him. The safeties are going to have to be playing really deep to respect the passing game with the wideouts that you mentioned. I think that a guy like Henderson who can operate in space is going to have a monster year. I think Master Teague's going to end up number 2 on that depth chart. I think Trevian Henderson is going to grab that job, and he's going to have an enormous year. And the recruiting, I mean, you look at 2, not only having the number 1 quarterback coming in Quinn Ewers, but you're looking at potentially the 2 top defensive ends as well as true freshmen playing in Jack Sawyer and JT Tuamalo. Yeah. And so I think the Buckeyes, again, I think that the rest of the Big Ten East in particular is going to present very little resistance, including Michigan State, Penn State. I think Indiana is going to be very good. I'd have them just outside my top 10, but I don't think they're going to be able to beat Ohio State. So I'm going to take C.J. Stroud leading that high-powered offense, and I think there's going to be some games that Ohio State scores in the 60s.
Yep. And then both of our number 1s. You got
why
to
not? Until you knock them off.
Nick Saban has won 7 national championships, but only 1 he has gone back-to-back, and only 2 national championships he's gone back-to-back, I should say. Mm-hmm. So I think that even with the loss of Mac Jones, they still have Bryce Young, who got some action last year. Number 1 quarterback recruit, maybe number 1 recruit everywhere in 2020. And then you got to look at Brian Robinson. He has never really got over the starting back hump. He's got other guys in front of him, but now he's got a clear daylight to the starting position, and now losing Devontae Smith and all those guys at the wide receiver position, they do have to keep the wide receiver awesomeness just in general.
With John Mechie,
just in going with John Mechie.
So I'm going to agree. I think it's another year for Bama. These schools, especially I think of Alabama and I think of Ohio State, the culture of continuity. So many assistants roll in and out of that program, and yet somehow the culture stays the same. So we'll just kind of, my playoff, I'm just going to put 1 verse 4, 2 verse 3. I'm going to have a Bama-Georgia game in there. I don't know how that will work, if it's a rematch, whatever. But then I think Ohio State and Oklahoma. And I'll take the Buckeyes against the Tide. I think it's going to be a rematch of last year. And I'm going to pick something like the same result. So I'm not as creative at the top of my top 10 as maybe I am at the bottom of my top 10.
You are very creative.
Yeah, thank you. Creativity is my big thing. So let's also talk about now a couple of more specific questions. These answers will be shorter. A team that a lot of people have in the top 10 that you think will not finish ranked in the top 25.
It's got to be North Carolina.
I'm going to go with North Carolina also.
There's no other option. I mean, they still have Sam Howell, one of the best quarterbacks they've ever had. But they lose two potential high draft running backs to the NFL in Michael Carter and Javonte Williams. They lost their two best wide receivers in Diami Brown and Daz Newsome. The defense, they lost Chad Surratt, who was a former quarterback, but went to linebacker and was a stud. Excuse me, and he left. They still got some returning guys, but it's mostly just Sam Howell, and that's it.
Now, what if Sam Howell goes down for a couple of games, right? I mean, that seems like I think North Carolina in the coming years is going to be really, really good. They've recruited well, and so I think that they're going to have a really strong program going forward. But again, I think that if you had to pick one, and none of these make sense because obviously everyone else thinks they're in the top 10, but every year someone collapses, and I think it could be North Carolina this year as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, again, a couple of good, bad flips here. Talk about one team that I think the party's over for, and then we'll talk about a team that it's about time. They've been waiting to be good, and I think that they're going to be good this year. So I'll go first with this one. My party's over team, I think I'm going to
be Cincinnati.
Yeah, I'm going with Cincinnati. I think that, every year there's a MAC team that rises up, and it's just been difficult to sustain that excellence. The other day we were talking about how a number of years ago it was Northern Illinois, just sustained excellent year over year, but that hasn't happened recently. And so I think Cincinnati, again, had a little bit of that pixie dust last year. They did really, really well, but they've got some tough big schools playing this year against the Bearcats. So I'm gonna predict them to go down a notch. And again, also Marcus Freeman's departure, I think, is a big thing. Great motivator. My team that I'd say it's about time, and I think that the fans have been waiting a while. I don't think this team's going to be crashing, the playoff or anything. But I do think that I'm gonna believe in Chip Kelly this year, and I think that UCLA does put together under an experienced Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and a system like Chip Kelly's probably just takes the right players coming into it, especially on offense. And he's had a couple of years now to get those players going. So I can see them making a kind of a 3-4 win leap and making their fans a little less dissatisfied than they have been.
Yeah, for the team that party's over for, I think it's going to be Wisconsin.
But Wisconsin, were they 4-3 last year?
Yeah.
And finished very poorly.
But after what they've done the last couple of years, I think Iowa is going to come and beat them in the West. And I think that, I don't know, I just don't think that this year is their year. A lot more competition in the Big Ten. It seems like they're losing a lot of guys, even though they really aren't. But that 4-3 year has proven that the party is starting to come to an end after numerous Big Ten championship appearances.
And what about a team that has been waiting for a while, maybe changed coaches, and their fans expect more, and this year it's about time, but here they are, they're gonna make some noise.
I think it's gonna be Texas. I think Texas with Steve Sarkisian and that really good offense, because he is an incredible mastermind at passing the ball and running the ball, is going to be amazing. They've got a All-American running back in Bijan Robinson. Their quarterbacks, how do I put this? They're going to be fine. They're going to be sufficient, but they're not going to be incredible potential Big 12 players.
So you're taking Texas for that.
Taking Texas.
Next question. We're going to do some opposites here. We're going to talk about coaching changes. First, I'll let you go first on this. The best debut for a head coach this year. Are you going to just go with Sark again? You're going to ride with Sark?
No, I'm going to go Auburn because that was my team.
Oh, okay. Going with Brian Harsin.
Brian Harsin.
Coming over from Boise.
Yeah. I just think that Bo Nix and Brian Arson are going to go together perfectly and add on. Great running game. I just think it's going to go well for them.
Yep. I'm gonna give two for different reasons. I think usually the best answer for this is you look for a head coach who is replacing a coach who didn't get fired. And so a coach that left and needed to be replaced because he was essentially promoted or hired away. For me, I look at UCF and I see Josh Heupel going up to Tennessee. I think the cupboard is going to be far from bare for Gus Malzahn at Central Florida. And I see Malzahn having probably the best record in terms of expectations there for a first-year head coach. But I think the second one I'll mention is I just really, really like Jedd Fisch. And I think that they've got a little bit of Michigan coaching staff in exile out there in Tucson with Don Brown heading over there too. Jedd Fisch is a smart guy, solid coach. He's coached under and with the best in the business. And so I think that there are good things ahead. Maybe already this year with some surprise wins for the Wildcats of Arizona.
Yeah, well, Jedd Fisch is a great coach. But did you see how bad they were last year? They lost at home 7-70 against their rivals.
Yep.
That just can't happen.
So I don't think they're going to have the best record. Again, I'm going to say UCF probably does. But I think that's such a low floor that I think when Jedd Fisch improves the team a little bit, it's going to be he'll done a great job with it.
He's just going to have to make miracles because they don't have very many great players on the team. He'll have to scheme a lot. He'll have to. He's got Don Brown, which is a blitz doctor, but he just.
All right, let's go the opposite. The first Power 5 school to part ways with their head coach this year.
I'll have you go first because I got to think about this one.
Well, I'm tempted. I mean, a lot of people are going to say Harbaugh's on the hottest seat. I think that no matter what happens, Michigan will let Jim Harbaugh finish out the year, just because of his kind of favored son status. I think Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech has been extremely underwhelming, and I think that's a possibility as well. But I'm just going to roll the dice here, and based on reports coming out of Lincoln, there's some concerns even with propriety of practice time, things like that with Scott Frost. And I think that could be one where Nebraska's, perhaps they're sitting at 2-6 or something, and they let one of the assistants finish out the year in Lincoln. So right now there's just no super obvious candidates unless you're really going to buy into the Clay Helton's dead kind of a thing. But I think I'm going to just, for lack of a really obvious answer, I'm going to go with Scott Frost.
I got to agree with you. There's really nobody else. Scott Frost, the expectations were this high in Lincoln, and they got down to about this high after 3 or 4 years. And he's not really just done anything. I guess he had a statement win against Penn State last year, but they went 4-5 and lost the first 5 games. I guess he's got a decent quarterback in Adrian Martinez. That's really kind of it. I mean,
in Michigan, you look at Michigan with Harbaugh, and Michigan has gotten bombed in some games. But with the exception of last year's Michigan State game, which they had no business losing, usually when Michigan's gotten bombed, they've gotten bombed by really good teams. And I guess Wisconsin really played over their heads last year too. But Nebraska, they don't have really much on that long-term record for Frost at all to hang his hat on. So I'm going to go with that
just one. When Michigan loses, for all but that Notre Dame game, when they kicked their butt, they won 42-17 in the Big House or something. They just, if it's Michigan's at 16 and the team they're playing's 11, they're going to lose 38-14. It's not even going to be close.
All right. Heisman Finalists. I don't know how many you're going to go with. I'm going to go with 4. I'm going to go with 4 as well. So why don't you give me your 4 first, and then I'll go.
My 4 is going to be Breece Hall behind Iowa State. Chris Olave. You got to have him in there. Spencer Rattler, seeing what he did at Oklahoma, and then the new quarterback Bryce Young, because you gotta have an Alabama person in there.
All right. Well, we have one of the four the same. We're both going with Rattler, and I think Rattler is probably the Vegas favorite right now, just given the way Oklahoma quarterbacks tend to put up numbers. I'm gonna take one non-offensive player. I'm going with Stingley. I think Stingley changes the game so much. I think especially if LSU wants to showcase him as a Heisman candidate, they might put him on a punt return, kickoff return kind of a unit, see if he can get a big play to really raise his profile. But that guy is one of the best corners to come through college football.
And I gotta add one because I gotta add one because I just wasn't thinking. I forgot to add Kayvon Thibodeau.
Oh, you're having.
I mean, he's just.
Kayvon Thibodeau, I'm going to disagree. I think Kayvon Thibodeau has a great NFL future, and I think he's going to appear high in a lot of mock drafts and things like that. But can a defensive end make enough highlight plays, especially a West Coast defensive end?
I think
a lot of people aren't going to be watching his games. He's going to have to do some serious work, tip passes for interceptions, things like that, dropped into coverage, get some interceptions, strip sacks, to get the kind of clips going on SportsCenter to build momentum.
Because, I mean, besides Oregon and maybe USC, where they're going to pass the ball a lot, he's got nobody else to really just stop him. Because if USC is going to go into the air raid offense, he's going to get a lot of chances at sacks. They don't really have anybody else who can block him. And he's just... If you put him on Alabama, he'd be starting there too. He just nobody's stopping him.
He's a specimen. He's a great football player. I don't think he's going to be in New York for the Heisman Trophy. So I've given you two of mine, Rattler and Derek Stingley. I'm going to go with JT Daniels too. I think Daniels is going to be the best passer in the best conference, the SEC. I think, there's a tremendous future for Bryce Young, but I think JT Daniels has done it. He's got a lot of college football under his belt, and I think he's going to throw the ball all over the place. And then, again, a dark horse, but to me it just makes all kind of sense to think about Dylan Gabriel making it there. Someone's going to have to lead the country in offense, and given the ability that Gus Malzahn has to really, really amp up offensive attacks, I think you see Dylan Gabriel there to watch Spencer Rattler receive the trophy, probably.
Hang on, so I think you forgot a guy.
What? Who do you think I forgot?
Derek King.
Well, the joke is always Derek King, but I'm not all that high on Miami. I have to see how this goes. So last year Derek King was my pick.
All summer Derek King's going to win.
But that's my joke pick. I think Spencer Rattler's going to win it. I wanted to give your predictions for the Week 0 games coming up this Saturday.
Yeah, I think pretty sure the lines on both of the games is. For the Northwestern Illinois game, I'm pretty sure the line is Nebraska, Illinois, excuse me. Pretty sure the line Nebraska 7. I'm going to take Illinois in this one, but I don't think they're going to win. I think it's going to be a 3-point game in Champaign. And then just UCLA, Hawaii. I mean, it's not really blockbuster Week 0 matchups, but I'm going to take UCLA.
All right. So there you go. Those are our Week 0 predictions, and we won't use them in our final tally, but we are looking forward to picking games for Week 1 starting next week. Until then, now, I'm the Preacher.
I'm Prodigy. Peace out.
Peace out.